I regret working in Antarctica. I worked in Antarctica. I know it sounds interesting, it is interesting, but it's a tough and stressful job. We were taken to the heart of Antarctica, surrounded by nothing but ice and snow within a 2,000-kilometer radius. We worked tirelessly from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, and with little entertainment, we often worked up to 18 hours a day. However, we had satellite Wi-Fi. It was slow, but kept my spirits up during those long days. But none of that was the issue. The issue was the completely stifling atmosphere. The whole place just didn't feel quite right. Most of the worksite was underground, with heated ceilings and an entryway leading down a cement staircase. The shelter looked exactly as you'd imagine, grey, square, built from concrete, with separate quarters for men and women, and a few double rooms, a large bathroom with showers and toilets, 3 labs, and a fairly well-equipped dining hall, all without windows. There was also a medical station and 2 rooms with long chairs for therapy. A double door led to the recreation room, where there was a pool table and a bar. The walls were made of pine plywood, giving a vibe straight out of the 1970s. All these rooms, including 2 fully furnished offices, where I spent most of my time, connected to a long, dimly lit hallway. On top of the station was an observatory. We could climb up there via a ladder, and it had a few windows that allowed us to look outside and hear the world beyond. However, we mostly only went there to smoke, as the room was just as cold as it was outside. The entire place was poorly lit. There were fluorescent lights and a few lamps in the corners, but overall, it felt like a cement hellhole buried underground, painted in drab moss green that was gloomy and dull. The outside was exactly what you'd expect of Antarctica, miles and miles of snow in every direction. If you're scared of the ocean, this place feels no different, except you're walking on water instead of sinking into it. I stood up, grumpy. He turned toward the hallway, from which I could hear voices coming from the dining room. I noticed the only person in the room was the physicist, lying on his side facing the wall. "Come on," I stammered. He didn't move. He just lay there. I only left after confirming he was still breathing. I entered the dining room. The space was lit by emergency candles placed on the table, and I saw the biologist, the doctor, and the 2 maintenance guys. Including me, not even half of the original group remained. They turned toward me, and one of the maintenance guys said, "Oh, look who it is. Here to scare the hell out of us again?" I neither laughed nor protested. I just sat down next to the doctor and asked about the geology couple. We knocked on their door, but there was no response, Jane said, her haggard eyes making her look older than her years. The therapist is missing too. We're leaving, the biologist declared, loud and firm. Right after the storm ends. To hell with the contract. How? I asked, feeling slightly cynical but unwilling to take the risk of dying due to isolated despair. We're 1,000 kilometers from the nearest base. Well, the man who had woken me up said, "We've got a giant snowcat. We can refuel it and drive within 50 kilometers of the nearest facility to contact them via radio. We have GPS, we'll take shifts driving, and we'll carefully avoid snowdrifts." "Does everyone agree?" the doctor asked. We all nodded. Then, he continued, "I suggest we stay together for a few more days, hoping the missing members return. If not, we'll ask for their forgiveness in hell." I sat in stunned silence all day. I just didn't understand why we were all so distraught. We were all left in the dark. We tried to chat to fill the void. The candlelight played tricks on our eyes, while the oppressive darkness bore down on us. The 6 of us sat there. Just sitting. Just waiting. Eventually, around 6 p.m., Jane suggested we check on the geology couple. We approached the hallway and heard sobbing, softer now, but still present. Jane knocked on the door. Waited. Knocked again. Then she called out that she was coming in, but the door was locked. One of the maintenance guys banged his fist and threatened to barge in. He pulled out a key ring, selected one, and it fit. He slowly opened the door. Inside was a nightmare. The first thing I noticed was the blood. Blood everywhere, on the walls, on the bed, on the ceiling, on the floor. Blood covered the light bulb, saturating the room in a ghastly red glow. On the bed was the husband. His eyes were wide in shock, his mouth agape. His throat was slashed, and his legs were gnawed down to the bone. His wife sat beside him, her back to us. She turned around. She, too, was drenched in blood. She was crying and chewing. She sobbed as she gnawed on a piece of bloody flesh. Her expression shifted from anguish to pure rage. She grimaced, seemingly preparing to scream, but only a raspy groan emerged, along with a few chunks of meat. The maintenance guy slammed the door shut, and we all panicked. "Barricade the door," the doctor yelled. We followed him to the kitchen and dragged a table in front of the door. We piled up enough furniture to cage the thing inside. We returned to the rec room. Everyone was crying, while Jane curled up into a fetal position, trembling uncontrollably. "We're leaving tomorrow," the doctor hissed through chattering teeth. The snowstorm outside continued its raging fury. I swear, sometimes the wind howled so fiercely that it felt like it was mocking me. I must have fallen asleep because a loud explosion woke me up. I looked around and saw everyone on their feet. We rushed upstairs to the observatory. Outside, we saw a massive plume of black smoke expanding, save for a bright orange patch a few meters away. Through the falling white snow, we saw fire. The snowcat was ablaze, its fuel drums stacked around it. And atop the flames was the person. Looking closer, I realized the figure was naked and dancing. "Oh my God," the biologist gasped, covering her mouth. "Jane!" It was Jane. She was nude, engulfed in flames, and screaming. Her shrieks echoed through the storm and into the pitch-black night. We stood there watching as the fire consumed her body. She screamed and screeched until she collapsed, silenced forever. We descended the stairs, feeling utterly hopeless. We sat in the darkness of the rec room, not saying a word until dawn. The physicist was still in bed, trying to ignore everything, but by now, I knew he was too far gone. Footsteps echoed in the empty halls, but at this point, I'd given up. If I had to die here, so be it. We huddled under blankets and coats, leaning against the walls. We sat there and cried. A single candle at our feet was our only source of light. I squeezed my eyes shut so I wouldn't see the shadow passing through the room before us. The next morning, the power came back on. The lights flickered, and we slowly stood up in the dim glow, blinking. I heard music coming from the bathroom. All of us went together to look inside. There, the song "Jesus Take the Wheel" played on repeat from an MP3 player. We entered the grey room and found the physicist naked, sitting on the floor in front of the iPod. Blood seemed to be flowing into the drain beneath him. He slowly turned his head toward me. Raising his left hand to his lips, he let out a long, drawn-out hiss, shhhhhhhhhhh. In his other hand, he held his bloody, mutilated genitalia. He closed his eyes and bared his teeth in a grotesque smile. Through clenched teeth, he whispered, "I like this song now." "Good Lord," the doctor said. He slowly approached the blooded man, trying to keep him calm. He continued, It's okay, son. I'm here to help. The physicist giggled. Again, his eyes still shut, his teeth still bared in a forced grin. As the doctor got closer, the man let out an inhuman shriek and lunged forward. He tackled the doctor to the ground, sinking his teeth into the old man's jugular. Blood gushed from the doctor's neck and into the physicist's teeth. The man stood up and glared at us with wild ferocity. Blood spurted from the doctor's neck as he struggled to breathe. As the old man collapsed, a loud bang rang out, deafening us. I fell to the ground in pain, the ringing unbearable in my ears. Eventually, as my vision cleared, I saw the physicist now lying dead in a pool of his own blood. A clean bullet hole was visible through his head. One of the maintenance guys stood over him, smoking a revolver. We were now me, the biologist, and the two maintenance guys. Everyone else was missing or dead. Despite the power being back, the satellite dish had collapsed, meaning no chance of radio or Wi-Fi. We sat pale-faced, crying and panicking for hours until one of the maintenance guys finally spoke. Our only chance of survival is to fix that dish. We looked at him quietly, knowing he was right. Outside, the wind and snow continued their relentless assault. "I'll go," the other maintenance guy said. "We'll go together," his colleague replied. The biologist and I knew we couldn't argue. We watched them put on their coats and step into the merciless blizzard. We waited what felt like hours, listening for a signal on the radio or Wi-Fi. Finally, it returned. For the first time that day, we smiled and waited for the men to return. We sat there, waiting. And waiting. And waiting. We didn't say anything, but we both understood. We knew we were the last ones left. She fell asleep in my arms after we'd cried ourselves dry. Before I closed my eyes, I swear I heard the giggle of a child. I woke up sometime later. Completely alone. I screamed, calling for the biologist. I searched every room until I found what I didn't want to find. I found her in the observatory. She'd written a sweet note about wanting to see the outside world one last time before she died. In her arm was an empty syringe, which I guessed was what she used to end her life. Her vacant eyes stared into oblivion. I left her there in peace. Now, here's why I'm writing this in my final moments. Why we were brought to this frozen hellhole, only to die. Why I'm penning this story before turning the gun on myself. I returned to my office, shaken. I saw my reflection in the mirror and realized my eyes were now completely black. The sight made me smash the mirror. I scraped a few knuckles, the pain grounding me back to reality, and in that moment, I saw a piece of paper fall from the shattered shards. It was a note attached to a photo. The note read, "If you're reading this, I hope it's not too late. This place is not what you think. The one in charge is no priest. He's far more dangerous. By now, you've probably discovered the unopened box. Inside, there will be some items meant to scare you. A priest will comment that these are demonic. All of this is staged. The black dust that escaped, it's neither dust nor demons. God help us, the people here didn't want to live here for a reason. Ever wonder why this place is so far from other facilities? This is a weapons testing facility. You've been exposed to a compound for a private company without realizing it. This particular compound causes incurable psychosis, something world leaders would kill for. Its purpose is to make enemies slaughter each other. If you've inhaled the black dust, it's too late. All you can do now is try to get this message out. But do not trust the maintenance guys, and do not trust the lead therapist. They're working for Earl. They'll vanish without a trace after his visit. They've been documenting your behavior, so even if the snowstorm, which I'm betting has arrived, clears, you'll be found and killed if you try to escape. I'm sorry. I lost my entire team. I wish you'd never come. I'm sorry, Dave. The attached photo was likely of the previous group. A man circled in red ink was labeled, me. The image showed a man in an orange hoodie and jeans.